this lecture, we will build, deploy, and test the dead letter queue changes. Before you go ahead and do that, make sure this stack here is gone completely. If you go to stacks, let me zoom out a little. Under here on the left side, see stacks, click on it. You don't see the patient checkout stack anymore. Go back to command line SAM build under the project or an error handling code, and the new template will be picked up with the changes. SAM deploy. That will deploy the new Lambda function along with the dead letter queue topic, and it will configure the topic for our Lambda function. Whenever there is an exception, the new Lambda will be triggered. So while this happens, the deployment happens, I'm going to pause the recording. The deployment is complete. Let's test it. To test it, go to the Amazon console, AWS console, go to services, go to S3, or let's go to Lambdas. I want to show you a small thing before we go ahead and upload the data and see everything in action. Go to Lambda. Let's see all the Lambdas it has right now. So it has the patient checkout error handling Lambda. This is the new Lambda we have just added. Then it has the patient checkout. This is the guy which will throw an exception. And this is the guy that will be handling it. In between those two, there is SNS topic for us. When there is an error, it will go to the dead letter queue, which is SNS, and this guy will handle that exception for you. Before all that happens, there is a catch here. Go to the patient checkout function. And if you scroll down to the asynchronous section here, the trigger here, we know all that it is S3 trigger, it will trigger it. But if you go down, there is a asynchronous section here. Go all the way down. Right there. See this asynchronous invocation. When the asynchronous invocation happens, there is a retry attempts. So this parameter determines how many times the Lambda service should retry when an exception is thrown. So the Lambda service will try 2 times. Even if it throws an exception, first it will try after a minute. Then even if it fails after that, then it will wait for 2 more minutes and give it a try. After those 2 retry attempts are finished, that is when it will try the dead letter queue if it is configured. In our case, it is configured. So do remember this. If you want to change this, let's change it. Instead of waiting for 3 minutes to test whatever we have done, if we change this to 0, so 0, 1 and 2 are the values, save it. So this value can be set in the configuration file as well. In our template.aml, I'm going to leave that as an assignment for you. You can try to redeploy it under the Lambda definition along with the other properties here. So when we define the patient checkout function, along with memory size, runtime, etc., you can configure a property called maximum retry attempts, the value can be 0, 1 and 2. So if you say 0 maximum retry attempts, as soon as there is an error, it will immediately try to send it to the dead letter queue if a dead letter queue is configured. Now go back, go to S3. So we don't have to wait now for the retries happening. We can upload some corrupt data, an exception should be thrown, and we should be able to see the error handler coming into picture. Upload to the bucket, click on add files. Corrupt data is what we want to use so that there will be an exception happening. Scroll down, click on upload. Once that finishes, if the retry was not 0, at this point, we'll have to wait for the Lambda service to try invoking that same Lambda with the same data for a couple of times. But now the retries is 0, we should be able to straight away go to Lambda and check the logs of not our checkout Lambda or the bill management Lambda. Go to error handling function. Go to monitoring. Click on view logs in CloudWatch log. If everything went through successfully, we should see the SNS event in this logs. Scroll down, there is a log created, which is good news. Click on that link. So our Lambda got triggered. You can see the start and end. But even better, expand this and you will see dead letter queue event, the entire SNS event with all the S3 information. See that? S3 put happened and all that. Whatever event triggered the actual lambda function, which is the patient checkout lambda, this guy. When this guy fails, whatever event this guy has received, all that information will be passed to the error handling lambda. That's the power of having a dead letter queue. So we can have a logic here of reprocessing whatever logic we have here. We can try something similar, or we can just log the errors in some place. That logic entirely depends on the business use case we have, but this is one powerful feature to handle exceptions.